With flooding devastating the Texas Hill Country over the weekend, we sit down with Journal reporter Noah Kalabach to see if a similar event could happen here in New Mexico. A judge has dismissed an appeal by 3 Albuquerque neighborhood associations that oppose the construction of a new stadium for the New Mexico United at Balloon Fiesta Park. A judge has dismissed the most serious rape charges against a former Albuquerque firefighter, but is still going to allow jurors to consider a lesser charge of attempted sexual penetration. And the EPA has added a former laundromat in Southeast Albuquerque to its Superfund National Priorities list. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Tuesday, July 8th, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
Historic flooding in the Texas Hill Country over the 4th of July weekend has devastated several counties and killed at least 90 people statewide, making it one of the deadliest flooding events in the region's history. With this deadly event happening so quickly, it begs the question on if something similar could happen here in New Mexico. To answer that question, we now turn to Journal reporter Noah Kalabach, who looked into this issue. Noah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Gino.
So Noah, as I mentioned at the top, you looked into if a similar flooding event could take place here in New Mexico. You spoke to several experts as well about that very question. What did you learn?
So 2 people that I spoke to, one would be the chief meteorologist for our partner station, KOAT, and another the chair of the University of New Mexico's Planetary Sciences Department. Both of them pretty much said it's not impossible for it to happen here. Now, one thing that's worth noting, and we do get to in the story, is that on average, New Mexico gets a lot less rain than Texas. However, these very hilly, steep, New Mexico has a completely different terrain from Texas, but it does mimic it in some ways, and in some ways that could cause flooding. There's also, as many New Mexicans know, burn scars, which present a completely different challenge that still can lead to flooding, and that is in areas across the state. Post-wildfire, for people who don't know, is often when those things appear.
And Noah, in your article, you make reference to climate change and how these experts feel that is affecting the flooding that we're seeing. What exactly did they share with you on that front?
Yeah, that's correct. Mr. Morton, mentioned obviously that with a changing climate, there's going to be more of these extreme weather events. That's something that we've heard from experts across the country. I'll say, even speaking from personal experience, I don't know that all of our readers know this, but I'm from San Antonio. I grew up going to summer camps in Kerrville where a lot of this flooding occurred. And as we note in our story, Texas had never seen something of this scale happen in that region. And that begs the question, what other areas are going to see maybe what was a routine natural disaster that happened in the past, or something at a much less scale happen at a more drastic scale as the globe continues to warm, as these trends and weather patterns become more extreme over time.
And Noah, one topic of conversation that's come up a few times since this deadly flooding has taken place is the federal cuts we saw earlier this year and how they affected the National Weather Service and could have affected what happened here. What did you learn about that?
Well, I believe the KOAT meteorologist that we spoke to mentioned, with these federal cuts, with these staffing cuts, there's less data to go off of. There's less balloons up in the air. And so that makes forecasts harder to predict. Now, as far as in the case of Central Texas, we're still seeing that debate play out. The White House today was pretty much fending off claims that its cuts had any impact on the kind of forecast that was put out, on the amount of alerts that the National Weather Service was able to send, things like that. But of course, there are people who are pointing to these cuts largely made from, the Doge campaigns earlier this year and saying, hey, this probably caused the National Weather Service that wasn't prepared to deal with something of this scale.
So an interesting look at New Mexico and if a similar event could take place here. Noah, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing the latest with us.
Thanks for having me, Gino.
In other headlines from the newsroom, a judge has dismissed an appeal by 3 Albuquerque neighborhood associations opposing the construction of a new stadium for the New Mexico United at Balloon Fiesta Park. The court ruled that the opponents failed to prove that they were denied due process. The stadium, which will seat 8,000 to 10,000 people, is privately funded by the team, with the city providing infrastructure but no direct funding. Mayor Tim Keller praised the decision, saying it paves the way for community development and sports tourism. The stadium replaces a previously rejected downtown plan that voters opposed in 2021. A judge has dismissed the most serious rape charges against former Albuquerque firefighter Anthony Martin, but allowed jurors to continue a lesser charge of attempted sexual penetration, which carries up to 18 months in prison. Martin and co-defendant Aiden Heyman were initially charged with raping a woman after a charity event in July of 2023. Heyman, who remains charged with 2 counts of criminal sexual penetration, testified that the sex was consensual and even claimed the woman staged a photo with him as a prank. A third firefighter, Angel Portillo, also faces charges but has not yet gone to trial. Closing arguments are expected this week. And the EPA has added the former Carlisle Village Cleaners site in southeast Albuquerque to its Superfund National Priorities list, allowing federal funding to clean up toxic pollution left by the dry cleaner. The contamination, chloride solvent gases, PCE, and TCE has spread beneath the South Carlisle shopping village into nearby houses, villages, and religious institutions, which potentially could affect up to 257 people. These chemicals are linked to serious health risks, including kidney and bladder cancer. The EPA has already installed air purifiers in some of the affected buildings, and a full investigation and cleanup plan are expected to begin this fall. The leading news is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy hearing all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Every subscription helps support local journalism and allows us to provide you with the news that matters to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect sunny and hot conditions with a high near 101 degrees, and as for this evening, mostly clear with a low around 69. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.